Hello and welcome to the podcast. We have the one and only retired Lieutenant Colonel, Miss Sandy Miarecki, joining us. We had her on in the fall period, and she's been gracious enough to come back for a reprise to give us an update on all things financial geopolitical as it relates to basically everything that's going on with the anticipated return of President Trump and what we need to be looking for in the days and weeks ahead. So if you are new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share so this knowledge can get out to others the way you have been afforded. As you'll recall, I'm just going to do the highlights of her resume, which is too illustrious to mention, but she is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. She was a test pilot, which is the best of the best. She is a homesteader, and she is also the acting governor under the Texas under the Constitutional Republic. And that would be enough, but there's much more that she's contributed. And so she's going to be giving us her musings on the situation at hand. So, Sandy Miarecki, Miss Miarecki, thanks for joining us again. How are you doing today?
It's Sandy, and thank you, John. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome. Just wanted to show proper respect, and we're happy to have you back. So, I guess right off the top, Sandy, the most obvious thing we can discuss, and it was one of the, I think, tenets and highlights of our last discussion back in, I want to say November, is now that President Trump has won, we're not out of the woods yet. We still have, I think, 40 days to his potential inauguration. So it's a two-part question. Do you see him potentially coming in early? And what do we need to be praying about or looking for in terms of what the deep state will try to do to prevent his return?
So, yeah, that's a multi-pronged question. We'll do the best we can to answer each piece. The main thing that we think the military, the good guys, have been trying to attain, and the goal of this whole time has been the most, I don't want to say peaceful because it's not going to be exactly that, but the most peaceful, least violent, least death option to transition this country back to its republic. So I think most of your listeners are already aware, but in case you've got some newbies, I'll just hit the highlights. Our founding fathers gave us a constitutional republic. In 1791, we got that's where it really started, the Constitution part especially. And so we lost it roughly about the Civil War timeframe. We started to lose it. We've been infiltrated since the beginning. I think we all know that. And it'd be basically bar attorneys, Jesuits, Masons, that crowd. And said by 1871, when the Organic Act of 1871 came around, that's really when it was final. And Washington, D.C. had become, quote, incorporated. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's just for, financial something. It's like, no. It became an actual corporation, which meant it was no longer a republic, which meant the Congress committed treason. And let's just go there. So it's been downhill ever since. Then we got the Federal Reserve, we got the IRS, we got all this other stuff. They turned people into sureties on the debt of the country through our birth certificates primarily. So, we've got these trusts that are set up without our permission. It's essentially identity theft. And that's how we've been existing this whole time. Nobody alive has ever seen a republic because we lost it in 1871. You'd be 150 years old right now if you even were a baby back then. So Trump went through another corporate election. Just the facts, right? So there's still a corporation pretending to be our government. I call it the corporate crime syndicate, mafia, whatever you want to say. And it's a whole bunch of actors pretending to be a republic, pretending to be our government when they're not. And we know that because we see them arresting grandmothers for praying on the steps of the Capitol. I mean, really. So it's persecution of patriots, persecution of people who believe in the Constitution and all that. Christians, persecution of Christians, who would have thought in the United States. So the big debate is what has happened to that corporation, because Trump wasn't supposed to win in 2016. That was a big surprise to the bad guys. And they had cheated. They thought enough to get Hillary in position, but that wasn't quite, because they only cheated so much, predicting how much they had to cheat, and then they underpredicted. So Trump gets in office, dismantles pretty much all of their plans, or at least puts a monkey wrench into a lot of them. And then they throw COVID at him. And the rest of that we already know. We just lived through it the last 4 or 5 years. So Trump was elected in a corporate election. That's the corporation that's been in existence at the national, state, county, city, doesn't matter, township level, all the way down. Because the corporations forced all the lower, quote unquote, lower positions to do the same thing. So we wonder why there's no constitutional law or, justice or any of those things that we hold dear, because our God-given rights said that we should get all of this stuff, equal justice under the law and all that. No, not so much anymore. So Trump is the CEO of the corporation. Again, he was in 2016 when he took the inauguration in 2017. Then there's the argument as to whether he actually stepped down in 2021. A lot would argue it was commander-in-chief, that he held on to that position because the country was, quote, in crisis. And his oath doesn't let him step down as the commander-in-chief during a crisis. Well, then who was Biden? Well, we can get into that whole discussion when you look at a picture side by side and you go, that's not even the same guy. That was the vice president back in 2015. Might be, it looks like a younger brother or something, but anyways, it's insane how many Bidens are actually running around, and you see even multiple of different Bidens at the same event, like when they go to Switzerland or when they go to France or whatever it is that he's doing. And then at lunch he's one guy, and at the dinner he's another guy, and you can see the differences in the face and the chin and the ears and all of that, And so, conspiracy theorists, right? No, we're pay attentionists, guys. We just pay attention. So Trump will be inaugurated. So he was elected by a corporate elector, so all the people are corporate. The election was corporate. The January 6th will be the verification. I can't remember the word, ratification. There's a word here I'm missing.
Certification, is it?
Certification, thank you. Certification of the election by the Congress, a corporate Congress, and then he will take office as the corporate CEO. That's the only way it can be. He can't be the president of the republic in that current sequence of events because there was no republic anywhere in there. Now, some people say, well, wait, the bankruptcy and everything and all that went through in the 7 years. And it's like, well, that's possible that he did that in 2017. And then the 7 years would be 2024. That's where we're at now. I need to see documents. I need to see evidence, right? I'm a scientist. Show me the proof. So I'm waiting for that. Is it possible that they did that? Yeah. But I think I've also seen something on Dun and Bradstreet where they just renamed the corporation again. So which corporation are we talking about? I mean, they just keep renaming it and rolling the debt over or whatever. So it's massively complicated, but that's in a nutshell what has happened since the last time we talked. And we're all praying very hard that Trump actually gets into office on January 20th with the inauguration, a corporate inauguration. And then from there, we can talk about all kinds of options, but I'll let you go from here.
Okay. Well, thank you for the summation. I appreciate that. And I'm sure our audience does as well. You and I have talked many times, and we come at it from a complimentary perspective, not being scientific, which is fine. But we've prayed in the spirit about it. What we've been shown is that as a team, that of course and this is normal. The enemy's always going to do what he does. I mean, they're going to try everything they can, but God's already aware of it and stopped it, and that he is going to get in and be protected. And I think they're also using doubles for Trump too, to help achieve that effect. You always use the what the enemy does against them in a counter move, right? So let's just go with that let's take it back a second. Is there a chance that he comes in prior to January? And if he does, what does that mean?
So going back to the original assumption I stated at the beginning, which is the good guy military is going to pick the path with the least violence and death. So any path that led to civil war ain't not even on the table. So we kind of knew back during the summertime, May, June, July timeframe, it looked like Trump was going to have to win in a fair enough election. It wasn't going to be fair, but it would have been fair enough for him to win. Now, why they didn't have it fair enough for the House and the Senate and everybody else so that he would have the proper support to do what he needed to do, I'm not sure. Unless he wanted the most corrupt people to still be in office to do what he's going to do next. So, what is the least violent and death option? Well, that would be to make it look as normal as possible. So we think the most likely thing is he will be inaugurated on January 20th. Is it possible he could come in early? Yeah, it would have to be something pretty drastic. Some, major like activation of the 500,000 estimated enemy troops that have crossed the borders and are working together, massing whatever, and have tons of weapons waiting at these camps, in the storage containers coming over from China or wherever. And they're all getting together and training and putting on their whatever uniforms or MAGA gear, whatever it is that they're going to put on to try to pretend. But this BLM civil unrest could be that's what they try to be, to burn down cities and whatever. So if something that drastic happened, maybe that they would do something to get him into position earlier so that he could start making the changes that he's talking all about now every time he opens his mouth. So there is another option, and that's a lot of the podcasters, the patriots, are talking about, and that's the Brunson case. So this is the Supreme Court case where the Brunsons filed a complaint against the House and Senate that they did not follow their oath to the Constitution because it says that, quote, if, don't direct quote, but if there is credible evidence of election interference, then it needs to be investigated within and then revoted on after 10 days or something. So they had just started to bring forth the electorals in January 6th when they had the insurrection. And so that was a Fedsurrection. We all know that the FBI and all the other infiltrators that were not MAGA, they were actually the ones who did the insurrection. It was the Feds. So, and then they framed MAGA patriots to make it look like it was those guys that did something wrong when they didn't. So they had to get people into the building. So they intentionally opened the doors. And the infiltrators said, let's go. And they got caught up in the emotion and then they went. So now all these arrests, like 500, 600 people, however many of them there are now that are in these federal prisons being tortured. Well, no other word. So Congress did not investigate. In fact, they voted to continue with the count that midnight, January 6th to 7th, when there was no one around. And they all committed treason in a nutshell. So the Brunsons said, that's what we're going after. It doesn't matter that there was or wasn't election fraud. There was credible evidence of, and it did not get investigated, therefore. And so they didn't investigate, so therefore that's the crime. And that's the filing at the Supreme Court. And the rumor on the street is that it's been voted by the Supreme Court, judged that, yes, Brunsons are correct. It was not done correctly. And so therefore, anyone who voted, yes, let's continue with the vote, committed treason. And there's like 30 senators and 10 congressmen that didn't. And that would be all of you that would be left. But then you could argue, well, they shouldn't have allowed the vote to continue because they were actively watching treason. So now, where do you draw the line? Are they all just going to be scooped up and moved out? And so if they try to use that route, does that sound like the least violent and death option? That sounds pretty disruptive, actually, doesn't it? And so that's why we in the Republic, and this is also my opinion, doesn't think that that's the one that's going to happen. But could they use that January 21st? I think that has a higher probability than him getting in early. That's just me. We've had these discussions offline about what's going to happen, but the whenever you do kind of was it armchair quarterback, hindsight 2020, and you look back on events and you go, I wonder why it went that way. And when you go, well, if the military is going for the least violence and death, well, that was what just happened. All the other ones were higher violence and death. So it's interesting when you see this pattern over and over again with these major milestones that are happening throughout our history. So long answer, but
No, it's fine. I enjoy your articulation. It's funny you mentioned Lloyd because we just had him on our podcast earlier today. So, and he's sort of the impression I get saying he's sort of a passenger or a bystander in his own case because he doesn't know how it's going to turn out either. He's watching like the rest of us. But, yeah, I know a lot of people have said it's done and dusted, and that remains to be seen, and what my conclusion is, for whatever it's worth, is I think I asked him, I said, I know President Trump has mentioned it. Do you think President Trump is involved in it or maybe has a hand in how it goes? And our conclusion is that if it's like you said, they want the path of least disruption, least problems. I mean, that's just a compassionate way to go. And as you know, being a fellow national, do no harm to yourself or anyone else, or withhold their rights, right? Their property and so forth. So in following with that accord, it seems like they would exercise it only if they need it as a last resort. And if they don't, it's because they didn't need it, right?
we agree.
Right. So I'm inclined to think that you're probably right, that there's a higher degree of probability with the 21st. And we'll have to see how it plays out. But I think that's an interesting, plausible conclusion that you draw. So
And I bring up a quick point on that.
sure, please.
Why would they judge it early? Why like the abortion Roe v. Wade, they overturned it, but it had been a month prior or something, and then it leaked out, quote unquote.
Right.
Why early? And I got to think, because they needed a healthy Supreme Court to make that decision. And so we've got a conservative Supreme Court, like we can call it that. We can call it a patriot Supreme Court. I mean, yeah, for the most part, it's majority anyway. So to have that decision made, signed, and sealed, and just ready to be released could be just to have it ready to go. And so that then there's no like emergency meeting of the Supreme Court or anything like that.
Well, so I don't know if your question is a rhetorical one or
It
if there's, okay, I thought so. But, they extended the session of the Supreme Court this summer, which they don't normally do. Again, the only thought I could have is why they might, to your question, why they might do it is if they're concerned that the deep state, because they're always several steps ahead of what the enemy is going to try to do. You said it yourself while last show, this has been a 60+ year plan in motion. Just so you know, I heard you. And so with that in mind, that means they've had anticipatory moves and counter moves, right? So one thought might be if they anticipate that they are going to try to do something dangerous to the public or disruptive, they can get in there and preemptively stop it. That's the only thing I can plausibly come up with. So my next question to you, Sandy, would be on the backs of what you shared. You're dealing with an illegal Congress and Senate holdovers of uninstalled or installed people that were not really elected in the way that people would think. So it's going to be harder for President Trump to get rid of them in the traditional construct. But if you noticed, he's starting to hire people in his cabinet. My question being, do you think he's doing that because he's drawing them out into the light, the nefarious types draining the swamp? And by putting them on his team, it's easier to fire them than it would be in the old modality of the elected tendency.
Well, that's an interesting question because I've been watching this myself, and when you do the research on, a new pick, the secretary of whatever, and then you go and you look at this person, you go, why did he pick this person? What a yucky person. Not only that, but they seem to be the biggest Zionists ever. Like Israel can do no wrong. Now, I am a very firm supporter of authentic Jewish people. The Israeli government is probably worse than the American corporation. I mean, they're probably a corporation too. Is Netanyahu the same guy as there was before? I don't know. He's just trying to hold on to power because he's going to get taken down by his own courts for all of his crimes that have already been committed and, noted in indictments and all that. So it's not even governments anymore. And then they forced all their people to take all the shots, 95% uptake rate and all of that. And so no, the Zionists are like anything goes when it comes to Israel. That's kind of in a nutshell, my definition anyways. And so you can be pro-Israel, but you don't have to be Zionist. Anyways, I digress. But Trump seems to be pulling out the biggest Zionists. And we've already got the problem of Congress people committing treason by having 2 oaths. You can't be an American citizen and an Israeli citizen and be in Congress. There's something in the Constitution that says that you're going to give up all your other oaths. You can't have 2. You have to give up all other oaths. So, so is that part of his plan, like you said, to expose these people? Is he trying to send us another message, this foreshadowing and the whole movie kind of scene thing, where he's saying, this is who has been in control this whole time, and I'm putting them out now on display so you can see them. And then they're being yanked because their backgrounds are so yucky, and that people go, that's too yucky. We don't want that person, And then now we've got RFK Jr. with the website where you can, quote, vote for whomever you want to be on the cabinet or recommend, right? When there's a whole like a resume process, where you say, well, this guy is great because, and you have to write like 100-word essay or something. I don't know. I said, I can't do that. I don't like anybody that much to put them in for an office.
Right.
But there's way, way, way better people. In fact, I'm kind of grateful because we in the Republic are already building our, staff. And so he's not touching the good people. We're like, okay, you take all the bad people you want. We're going to go over here. We're going to go find the patriots that we know are good people.
Right.
And because they've gone through the trial by fire. So there's a plus and a minus there, right? But yes, I do believe it's all part of the show.
I do too. I think it's moves and counter moves, and I think he wants us to think critically and logically, particularly us patriots, and if you like the term anons, whatever, to be able to decode a lot of this for ourselves. And a good example and a nice pivot, Sandy, to the next part of our equation is the financial component, which we heavily focus on here on this channel, as that's our milieu, but what we've been tasked with. But they all complement each other ultimately in different ways, touch points. So all that being said, you had him say he was against earlier in the year crypto. Now you see he's very much for it. So he was setting them up as a double entendre to kind of see, as he said one thing, who would respond in what kind of way. It was putting out bait. Now we see with BRICS, he said about a week and a half ago, oh, don't de-dollarize, or I'm going to put sanctions and tariffs. And he knows he's part of BRICS. He knows he's constructed BRICS. He's working with Xi and Putin and Modi and all those guys already, helped that coalition come together. So ostensibly what we see him saying is go ahead and do it, because we know that the BRICS is outside the jurisdiction of sanctions and tariffs. It doesn't really affect their wheelhouse, much like being a national takes you out of the corporation. You become immune to it. So in that same vein, what he's really saying is go ahead and do it. And I'm going to remove the Federal Reserve, which really is federal, has no reserves, and is not tied to anything, any constitutional value of gold and silver.
No,
While
private banks.
What's that?
Private banks.
Right. And so let's take them out of the equation. You see all the branch closures left and right of banks, which was telling you a story of proof, to your point. So you can see the puzzle pieces amalgamating is what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. So then you see he's probably going to pivot towards a U.S. note with treasury-backed gold and silver, which of course is constitutional. Right. So you had said on the podcast last time that we were waiting for, because we get this question all the time, and you're in a position that can help satisfy this issue. So I apologize for the verbosity, but I am getting to a point, which is
I'm still following you though, so that's good.
Oh, that's good. I hope the audience isn't falling asleep yet, but I am trying to satisfy their concern about Nasara Jassara. So you had mentioned on our podcast last time that most likely, if I remember correctly, the most likely path is once he's in, as of right now, in case something changes, January 20th, or now bringing to the light to 21st, day semantics, that would be the inaugural date of when the Sarajasara hits 120 days. You see the fairs, it's the dead jubilee, blah, 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 blah. Is that most likely what you still see now, since we've now talked 6+ weeks later, being the case to see the debt forgiveness, the patents, and all those things come to light?
Yes, I still believe that everything happens simultaneously. So revaluations of foreign currency, the downfall of the Federal Reserve, the dollar, the Nasara Jasara, probably BRICS coming more into play, probably the fall of the stock market. I mean, we just, keep listing things. There's an interesting thing that Trump did at one of his rallies. It's either September, I mean, maybe it was October. He said something, 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 and then the new election before Memorial Day. There's no election before Memorial Day. Let's do some math. So the Friday before Memorial Day, let's say that we have an election on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Count back 120 days. I think it's January 21st.
Interesting.
He says things that is probably a teaser or to throw the bad guys off or whatever, and so who knows, but man, that is a freaking coincidence if you ask me, that happens to be the day after he's inaugurated. And of course we all pray that all the J6ers are released immediately. Yeah. You really, really need to have a POW team on each of them as well, because it's been as if they've been prisoners of war. And with the suicides and everything that can happen when they're reconstituted back into society and their families and everything. I mean, they've lost everything in most cases. Their wives and kids have left. Their homes are gone. Their everything. Their businesses. There's going to be a lot of compensation. Sorry, I digress. But that's one of the things that has to happen on January 20th or 21st. It's just anyway.
I completely agree. I mean, the whole thing is just, I don't even know what word to describe it. Disgraceful seems perfunctory, but it's all
I pray for them every day. Every day.
We need to keep them alive in memory and in spirit to help them subsist until that point, or maybe potentially sooner. Right. So you bring up an interesting, I mean, there's lots of ways we can slice this pie up, but you brought up an interesting point about everything coming together. And so that brings up another question people have about med beds. We had posted over the weekend, I don't know if you saw, Mr. Poole had said he gives some very interesting timelines from January 27th to February 3rd. Again, no coincidences. About a week after President Trump is inaugurated. You just said a minute ago that everything would start to correlate once he's in. So I find the timing of these events very interesting. And I think this would help out the J6 members as well. That's why I bring it up. So would you surmise that's a reasonable time frame for the med beds to come out after he's back in?
I think so, at least initially. I can say without giving details, I know of specific circumstances where there are military grade med beds that are being used by military, and where someone is having a military member, a veteran is having some serious health issues, but a buddy's wife is having terminal cancer and he gives up his med bed appointment to give it to the wife. So this kinds of things are happening. Of course, it makes total sense because these guys are selfless. I mean, that's what our military generally is, as long as you're below the rank of lieutenant colonel. Let's just say that, because the rest of them need to stand trial. But I got to see that firsthand at the Air Force Academy. So.
Did you really? Yeah. You saw a trial when you were there?
No, not a trial, but the crimes being committed by everyone that needs to stand trial.
Gotcha. Well, I can back up, Sandy, what you just said, not that you need it, but just for our audience sake, because they know. We have on our team, one of our guys, Jerry, knows a gentleman who goes by, code name, the Marine. and he served 2 tours of duty in, I believe it was Korea and Vietnam.
Mhm.
And he's an older gentleman now, as you would expect. And he was in line to go to Walter Reed for a med bed appointment. And it was about this time actually, 2022. And he did selflessly give it up to a fellow, a Semper Fi military Marine who had, if I remember right, he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which you don't typically come back from in the old world. And he gave up his spot. And he wasn't in the best, the Marine wasn't the best of health to begin with, but the selfless act that you're talking about.
Right.
And what we understand is he went to Walter Reed. He went into a med bed, and the same day, his white and red blood T cell count went up 200%, was completely healed, and even got about, I think, 30 to 40 years back on his life. And he's been walking in a park with his wife that he hadn't been able to walk in years. So I can back you up on that part of something that we can actually substantiate. I'm sure
Mhm.
you have your own stories as well.
Well, in more in generic terms, because I don't like to share the specifics
Sure.
because the knowledge of the military grade med beds is not exactly something for public consumption at this time, apparently, which considering how much is all the info is being flying around the Patriot News, I wouldn't, okay, if you guys don't want it to be out there, it's fine, but it's out there. So,
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, but at least we're just trying to get as much factual, honest information, and you're helping to facilitate that. So I think what you're saying has a lot of substantive meat to it because, like I said, with that article coming out over the weekend that I mentioned, the
Mhm.
timeline coincides really nicely with his return. Our understanding has been from said Marine that, as you said, the military grade med beds at the highest level. He was saying that basically the public was going to start there and then they would roll out at a later date at the major hospitals around the country, in all major cities and towns, whatever. And they're just waiting at the behest of President Trump as the commander in chief to give the signal to that to move
So
forward.
let me say two things here because
Please.
there's scams going around, and I want to make sure that all
Yeah,
your people know
sure.
there's no such thing as paying for a med bed. There's no such thing as paying for an appointment for a med bed. There's
Correct.
no such thing as any of that. Do not fall for the scam. The second thing is there's no such thing as signing up for a QFS account. You
Right.
already have yours. It's already designated. Every
Right.
person in the world has one already.
Yep.
So don't pay anybody to quote, get your QFS account. It's a scam and they're probably trying to get you to sign something that gives all your money to them,
Right.
something along those lines. So please don't fall for those scams. If it sounds like it's a scam, it's a scam.
I'm
So,
glad you said that. We've brought that up before. We've had on some of our channels, they try to come on and put
mhm.
our name on it. Oh, sign up for your QFS account. And I've had to do separate PSAs to my audience. Haven't had to do in a while, thankfully, but hey, don't sign up for this. That's not going to, and yes, you're right. I thank you for saying that. Yes, you don't have to pay for the med bed. The bonds have already covered all that stuff. It's well taken care of. I often get the question of, well, how does NASAR help with insurance? I'm like, it doesn't even exist. That the whole point is to get rid of insurance. You can make somebody whole with your own account. You don't need to do that. So thank you.
Insurance, you get insurance because you can't afford to pay
Right.
the full amount of a medical bill.
Mhm.
But if you can afford to pay the full amount of the medical bill, then why have insurance? And it was Dr. David Martin who actually did a very intelligent, well-researched presentation. I forget which college, it might have been Hillsdale even. It's on the Rumble or whatever channel. And he laid out the fact that it's the insurance concept that is actually behind the banking evil. So if you were to go further
Mhm.
back into the evil, you find insurance even worse than the banking cabal. So I
Yeah.
didn't think about that before. And then I'm looking at this presentation, I'm going, he's got all the evidence right there. And he also names the names of all of the royal families that are like the Committee
Mhm.
of 300 or the Committee of 30 or whatever, whichever one you want to talk about, that's
Right.
actually running the whole show from the evil side. So,
Well, you'll like this, Sandy. I don't know if you ever read this book, Creature of Jekyll Island, but
mhm.
from a scientific, fact database standpoint, you would love that book, but not love it,
Yes.
but love the provability of it because it
Mhm.
all points back to the Bilderbergs, the Rothschilds, and J.P. Morgan. They're all one and the same. the Committee of Six back in 1912, so
That's why they intermarry so that they
yeah, well, that's
stay.
the royal blue bloodline. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm just letting you know I'm very much on track with you.
Mhm.
One other question I did want to ask you, because I know you won't say it if it's not, if you don't have the provability for it, but I wanted to just delve into your wheelhouse a little bit. With respect to the med beds, the other discussion question has been, um, there's different med beds that achieve different things. Obviously, one for pineal, one for age regression, one for all purpose and surgeries and perforations, right? But as far as dental is concerned, is there going to be a separate med bed that you know of for dental, or that just be in the general support? I don't know if you knew.
I don't know that specifically.
Okay.
The way that I've been told by some of the insiders, there's essentially three kinds of med beds.
Mm-hmm.
There's the military grade ones, which can regrow limbs.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard that before, but okay, we'll go with that. There's the med bed that compares your DNA in your body, etc., to the quote ideal 35-year-old woman or 35-year-old man. But to me, that sounds like cloning. I'm going nowhere near that bed. I'm just saying, because I don't want to be this 35-year-old woman. It's like, this is me. I'm going to be me. God made
Right.
me, right?
Right.
And then the third one, which is I think the one I'd be most interested in, is the frequency med bed. So the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are the red light or the healing
Mm-hmm.
frequencies, like a Rife kind of a,
Infrared.
yeah. And so and then it's the different frequencies for the different problems. It does the scan. It says, okay, your biggest problem right now is pancreas, whatever it is.
Right.
And then you start getting hit with all those frequencies. And then the next time you come in, they check you out again. Okay, now the pancreas is okay, but now your stomach's not so good, or your thyroid, or your whatever it is, right? And so that I'm very interested in because I've actually heard of those in existence now. And you can, if you find them, to make appointments and stuff. It's not very well advertised, of course,
No.
but that's the thing that I think sounds the most natural to me. Like if you were to have God make a med bed, it would be like that because you're using God's creation to
Yeah.
heal yourself. That's my thoughts.
Agreed. I can give you some good confirmation on a couple of things you said from said Marine, because I asked him about that, with age regression. He said Trump was commandeering a lot of the med beds that were out in the hallways, right, to get them away from the nefarious bad guys and put them in a repository and military hospitals as well as commercial grade hospitals. A lot of these commercial grade hospitals already have them in back rooms, and they've already been training a lot of the staff, much like the Wealth Management Center for banking for our exchanges for the currencies. So this thing has been, and you can go to our Telegram and see all that stuff. So we source it all out. But he was saying that they do have a light and frequency Tesla med bed at the military level that will help with age regeneration without the potentiality of what you were discussing, right? Of that concern. He also did cite to me they couldn't take any pictures, obviously. They signed NDAs and things like that. So I'm sorry I can't show you, but as a military person, this does exist, which is to say, they mentioned a case study of a young man who was 22 or 23, and he was in combat in Afghanistan, had his right leg blown off, and they put him in a med bed, replicated the left one, and gave him a whole new right leg, and he was walking same day in no time, completely healed. So that is a real fluid thing that is existing. So these things are as advertised, and I think once Trump is back in, they can ensure the safety of making sure they're in the hands of the right people. To your point.
Right.
So exciting possibilities and things to look forward to. From this point forward, Sandy, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Anything that you would like to talk about from what we've exhausted, or anything you want to share?
No, I can give maybe a quick update on the Republic we talked about.
Oh, please. Yeah.
So I think it's been about 2 months. I think we were somewhere in the middle of October, if I'm remembering correctly, that we last spoke. And so at the time we were around 47 or 48, I think, states that had been reseated with interim governors in the Republic. And these are volunteers coming forward from those states to take on that job as a temporary, because all we're doing is we're holding on to the seat to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. And to fill that seat, in case the Republic was called up early, But now we're thinking that we're probably going to get called up sometime after January 20th. And so we've got a little bit of time. We've got folks that are still coming in, still volunteering, which is fantastic. We welcome anyone who's feeling like God is putting it on their heart to get involved. And we currently have 50 governors. So it's been hit and miss. Sometimes a governor has a health issue or a family issue or whatever, has to step down, but because they've already got a secretary of state or a senator or something, they can take over. And so we've pretty much been probably with governors for the most part in all the states since about the election. Probably not a coincidence. We passed 10,000 people on the website the weekend before the election. We thought that was a very nice number. So,
Oh, yeah.
we're still trying to fill all 8 positions in all the states, although we have probably about 34 or so states that are fully manned with the 8 mandatory positions now. We're using the Constitution and the Northwest Ordinance, which was how do you make a territory and how does a territory become a state, northwest of the colonies. That's why it has that name. And so that's the Ohio, Indiana, et cetera. And so according to that, you need a governor, secretary of state, 2 senators, a House, and 3 justices. So getting those 8 positions filled is fully manning the state level of that particular state or territory, however you'd want to define it. Then you have to go down to the county level, and this is all happening simultaneously. Now, back in the original republic, back in the 2008 to 10, 11 timeframe, it all happened from the ground up. It had to go from the counties. The counties had to be reseated. And then you started to build the state level, and then from there, the national level. And so that's when the first president was elected, was after they had enough states seated for a supermajority, the 3/4 majority. So many of those states are now fully up with those 8 positions. We still have several states that still need some help. So a lot of the northeastern states, your Rhode Island, Connecticut, that kind of region. So anyone that lives up in that area, we need help. Utah, I can think of like some hit and miss folks, around the country. So the counties also need to be reseated again. They were reseated before, but county justice, county clerk, of course, being a critical position because of the election that has to occur within 120 days. They're going to have a massive team of people to coordinate all of that. So we're doing a really great job. I am so proud of the volunteers that are coming forward and taking these jobs, because they have to essentially go from 0 political experience. Those are the awesome ones. We love those people because they don't have any preconceptions. They can't, blackmail and, whatever else that goes on behind the scenes with the current political ruling class. So they're awesome Christian for the most part, not always, but very hardworking, honest, moral, ethical believers. And that's who we need to hold on to these seats as best as we can. And so if that sounds like you and you feel like you're ready to do something, then go to our website. The short website will redirect to the long website, and that's republic4usa.org, O-R-G. FOR, not the number 4. So Republic, FORUSA.org. It'll bring you to the members website, and that's where you can register. And that's registering as an elector. And then there's a little box that say, I want to volunteer for more. And that's how you'll get in touch with your interim governor, and you can go from there.
Awesome. And we'll put that link, of course, in the description. Since you're in Texas and the acting governor, you'd be, I would think, the most appropriate person to ask, again, because you can prove things out, right? There's been wide discussion of Texas becoming its own country and having its own digital gold asset-backed coin and being part of BRICS. Can you speak to any of that?
So I'm in communication with the Republic of Texas. So that's the the nation, the Republic of Texas. It's one of two states that were their own nations, Hawaii being the other one, because it was a kingdom of Hawaii. And so before they became states, they were countries. 1836 is when the Republic of Texas was its own country, got its annexation or whatever from Mexico. 1845 is when it supposedly obtained statehood. Now, the Republic of Texas folks have pretty good proof that shows that the statehood was not properly voted by the people, corruption, whatever, in order to get that pushed through. And so they have their own president, Senate, House, etc., as their own nation. And I talk to them routinely. You'd first think that what I'm doing in my republic and what they're doing in their republic are like in direct conflict, but in actuality, we're both working towards the same goal. They're trying to use the Republic of Texas as a leveraging point to get the corporation to get the hell out. Because if Texas leaves, it's something like the 6th largest economy if it was just by itself, Texas, and not even counting, the United States, so in the entire world. So if Texas was to take all that with it, that would be a huge dent in the corporation. And so they're essentially using blackmail, which I'm like, I love this. This idea is awesome because you're using their own tools against them. But it's like, yeah, we're going to leave unless you vacate, right? And so my Republic for the United States of America, wants the same thing. We want the corporation gone, but we're doing it through the good guy military, who's the ones that approached us in 2008, got the whole ball rolling, got these early patriots to figure out the plan and to restore the Republic as much as they could, waiting for January 21st, maybe, so that's what we're thinking right now. And so if the Republic of Texas stays as the Republic of Texas and the people don't vote, so that's one thing that's going to happen early before the 120 days, maybe a 60-day point, is that each state, territory, however you want to look at it, has to vote whether or not they want to be a state in the United States. My job is to make sure that the people of Texas have that voice in the Republic for the United States until they decide they don't want it. So Republic of Texas and Republic for the United States are pretty much doing the same thing, just in different ways. So circle around to the coinage. If the Republic of Texas, the people decide that they want that instead of Republic for the United States and be part of the United States as its own as a republic again, as a state this time, lawfully voted into existence, then they would have to create their own coin, create their own money, their own trade agreements. They would block all their borders, right? All around Texas. They would probably start asking the other states, hey, Oklahoma, hey, Louisiana, you want to join us? That would be controversial because maybe Oklahoma and Louisiana are perfectly happy to be in the United States. But now, I don't know. So that's all the stuff that's like, okay, that's past the 120 days. These temporary interim positions, that we're holding, me as the interim governor of Texas, I am just here to hold the seat, make sure we have honest and fair elections, and that the people of my state have a fair voice in the Republic for the United States until they decide they don't want it. And that's it. That's what all the governors, interim governors in this Republic for the United States are doing, Hawaii included. We're pretty sure Hawaii is going to vote not to be in the United States.
Sure.
And that's okay.
Well, they were nationals before, like you said, so it just makes sense.
Kingdom of Hawaii.
Right. Yeah, they go back to the source. And thank you for
They
that.
have a royal family there now. So it'd be interesting to see what they end up doing. But I think that's probably what'll happen.
Thank you. That's a great analysis of the overall equation. And it makes me wonder, Sandy, as a sidebar, if that's maybe why 1,400 acres were given to Texas to create that border and create that blockade that you were talking about.
Well, that 1,400 acres is supposed to be used for processing.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of these illegals that will either run to that 1,400 acres to be processed back out, or if they're going to be captured and brought down to this 1,400 acres in order to be shipped out. So, but we do know that there's already been caravans coming up from, South America up through the Darien Gap, etc., turning around and going back. Mexico is actually starting to do that because they went 25% tariffs. President Trump, they're like, oh, we can't have that. So they start turning those caravans back around the other way. So yeah, it'll be an interesting transition.
Who knew tariffs work?
Oh, I know. Well, it's I think there should be like stages, right? So it's 25% if you don't do anything. It's 20% if you reach some goal, of blocking how many people are coming here. 20, 15%, like say like a incentive plan,
Sure.
That would be a really good way to motivate the Mexican people, Mexican government in particular, to start following what they're supposed to do and help us protect each other's borders.
That, and it would be an extension of Nasara Jasara, right, to bring them back to their country, make them safe and prosperous. So they don't need to be here. Everybody wants to be where they're from and their families. It's just logical and natural. So this would facilitate, in essence, that process.
That's right.
Great. Well, do me a favor, Sandy. Give me your website again so people can hear it, please.
Sure. Republic for FOR USA.org.
Okay.
And like I said, you won't end up there. It'll auto direct to the long website. That's too long to give you guys on a podcast.
Sure. And what other thoughts or anything that you'd like to say to the audience today before we end?
Just keep the faith. Remember that Trump winning this election is step one. We only have 9,999 more steps to go. Don't quit. Don't go back to eating your popcorn and watching your football game or whatever it is. Get off the couch, get involved, because you want to be a part of this, because it's going to go badly otherwise. And if we all just go back to the way it used to be, it's going to fail. It's unfortunate, but our founding fathers intended every adult American, even the kids, to be involved. And so you can't let this opportunity go. You've got to get involved in some way, even if it's just at the county level, getting involved with the county assemblies and the people, because it's we the people at the county assembly level. That's the government. And because a county can't make a trade agreement with another state, it has to be the state. That's where now you give a little bit of power to the state people. And they then do what the counties tell them to do. Oh, how novel. They actually represent the people. Or they're fired. And they only get to stay there for 1 or 2 terms, and that's it. And that's going to be part of the whole constitutional, I'll say, tweaking, because we're not going to rewrite the Constitution. It does need some serious changes, but at the core, that's why the republic is a constitutional republic. That's why we follow it. That's why we swear an oath to it. So I invite anyone who's interested in this to join. And thank you for having me on your show again.
Oh, it's always an honor, believe me. And yeah, we do need a realignment to the Constitution, I think, is another way to look at it. And you're helping to facilitate that. As you know, folks, we have a new sponsor that we're pleased to be working with for precious metals, which is Constitutional Sound Money. And by supporting our sponsor, in fact, you're supporting the podcast, which makes these podcasts and information possible. So, America, listen up. Are you tired of watching the government gamble with your hard-earned retirement savings? Inflation's out of control. National debt keeps climbing, and foreign powers like BRICS and illegal immigration are pushing the US dollar weaker as well as the cost of everyday goods higher. Well, here's the kicker. During Trump's first term, gold prices skyrocketed, doubling in value. That's right, gold doubled. Well, what if it happens again? Are your retirement savings ready to handle what's coming? That's why you need Orion Metal Exchange. They're America's highest rated precious metals IRA by Retirement Living, and they give you more metal for your money. Imagine converting your IRA or 401k into gold and silver, real physical wealth that you can count on no matter what. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control of your future today by calling Orion Metal Exchange now at 888-378-1426 and get your free investor's guide. It's packed with the information that you need to protect your retirement savings. You've worked too hard to leave your future to chance, so call 888-378-1426 and do it now. Orion Metal Exchange is here to help you secure your wealth and stand strong as a proud conservative American. And remember, past performance does not guarantee future results. There's always a risk of investment, and there's no guarantee of any kind. Lieutenant Colonel retired Sandy Miarecki, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure from all of us to all of you and your family. Have a wonderful, safe, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we look forward to catching up with you in the new year.
You too, sir. Take care, John.
Take care. God bless.